After my video yesterday, showing you all what is likely to be arriving in the big December patch for Battlefield 5, and a confirmation from the DICE devs that the TTK is being changed in spite of overwhelming support for it remaining as it is right now, today I'm going to dig into a data mine that has revealed several new weapons, new gadgets and vehicles that are likely coming to Battlefield 5 in the near future. It's no secret that DICE is planning to add more content into Battlefield 5 very soon anyway, but this data mine comes after the latest patch to the game, as the Deluxe Edition launched last week, and the information was passed to me by Hauptmann HK on Twitter. His profile can be found in the description. Now I'm going to work through the list by class, and then move on to gadgets and vehicles at the end, but it is worth mentioning, this is of course a data mine, so nothing is really confirmed until DICE come out and say that this is definitely going to be in the game. But the fact that it's in the files, I think there's intention to add this stuff into the game. Okay then, first of all we're going to start with the Assault class, and here we appear to have 3 new weapons in the files. 1 fully automatic weapon and 2 semi-automatic rifles. The fully automatic weapon is the Ribet Rolls, a weapon that we saw in Battlefield 1, released with the French DLC, and one that did become quite popular with players who had the Premium Pass. Of course, Battlefield 5 doesn't have a Premium Pass, and that means all of these weapons, gadgets and vehicles that I'm going to list now will be free for everybody, which is great news. The Ribet Rolls was a weapon that was produced during the First World War as an attempt to arm French soldiers with something more malleable and adaptable than a bolt-action rifle. Now, the 2 semi-auto rifles found are the MAS 44 and the AGM 42. Now, the MAS 44 was a French rifle developed before the German occupation of France during World War II, but ended up being hidden away until after the war. Around 7,000 units of this weapon were made, and many of them ended up in the hands of French Marine commandos. The AGM-42, or the Automatgewehr M42, is a Swedish rifle produced and used by the Swedish Army from 1942 into the 1960s. Now, around 30,000 units were produced, and it featured a 10-round box magazine and had a rate of fire of around 40 rounds per minute. You might remember back in Battlefield 1, the Sjogren shotgun, a Swedish weapon, made its way into the game, despite not having a huge amount of use during World War I. Seems DICE is doing the same here with the AGM-42, not a huge amount of use during World War II, but it's a Swedish weapon, they're a Swedish developer, so it's somehow found its way into the game. These 3 weapons should add a bit more variety to the gunplay that we have present in Battlefield 5. The semi-auto rifle category is proving quite popular with the community thus far, so a couple more options I'm sure will be welcome. Next up, we're moving on to the medic class, and of course here we're going to be discussing new submachine guns. Now, I'm aware at the moment that the balance of the submachine guns is not perfect. So many of those enemy hit 98 and enemy hit 99 moments before you end up dying to the person that you just did 98 or 99 damage to. That's really, really annoying. But as I reported yesterday, DICE is working to tweak these values and make the SMGs more competitive at close range, which is a good thing. So moving on to some of these new weapons, the well gun is listed in the files. This is a weapon specifically developed for the British SOE, the Special Operations Executive. This was an irregular warfare organisation that would send troops behind enemy lines to carry out very specific tasks, and the war story called Under No Flag depicts this in Battlefield 5 currently. The well gun fired at around 500 rounds per minute, and it featured a 32-round detachable box magazine, and it used the same 9mm parabellum round of the Sten gun, and many German weapons as well. This meant when they went behind enemy lines with this gun, it would be easier to obtain more ammunition if it was needed. The Patchit SMG is also mentioned in the data mine. This SMG was used in limited numbers during World War II and was designated the Patchit Machine Carbine Mark I during its use at the Battle of Arnhem, where it was in the hands of some airborne troops. The weapon is also known as the Sterling, and a cool little fact here, it was used during the filming of the original Star Wars film as a stormtrooper blaster, with some small cosmetic changes. A lot of blasters blasters in Star Wars are inspired by World War I and World War II weapons. The Lanchester SMG made by the British is also mentioned in this data mine, but with it being so similar to the German MP28, I mean it's basically a copy of the MP28, I'm not sure if DICE really intends to add this into the game or not. It is listed separately to the MP28 however, so we will have to wait and see if DICE does add this later down the line, and likely they're going to have to balance it slightly differently to make it viable. The ZK383 is another SMG listed in the files. This is a Czech weapon produced in the late 1930s, and around 35,000 units were made, and the German army used some of those during World War II. It featured a rate of fire of just 460 rounds per minute, but it did come with either a 30 or 40 round detachable box magazine, so in Battlefield 5 we might see those in the upgrade pass. Maybe you can get an extended magazine or something. There are mentions of the weapon having a variable fire rate toggle of up to 750 rounds a minute however. Not sure if that's going to make it into the specializations, but just another cool feature of the weapon. Strangely, for a submachine gun, it has a built-in bipod, and that's because it was originally supposed to be a squad automatic weapon, similar to the Bren machine gun, but it ended up becoming an SMG and fitting into that category better, and it looks fairly similar to the MP28 and the MP34, so I can kind of see why it never really made that squad automatic weapon role. Moving swiftly on now to the support class, and we have a few interesting but not totally surprising mentions here as we go through. Two shotguns were found in the files, the Sjogren and the M1897, both featured in Battlefield 1, with the Sjogren coming into the game as part of the French DLC. There's a few French weapons we've mentioned so far, and that theme continues further down the list. Next up, the Browning M1919 machine gun, arguably the standout weapon for the support class here, confirming American weapons are pretty much on their way into Battlefield 5. This machine gun saw action throughout the war with American troops, and I wouldn't be surprised if this weapon didn't actually make an appearance until DICE unveils the American faction coming to the game. We know that is going to happen at some point, but we just don't know when that is yet. The Daan machine gun is in the list. This is a French medium machine gun, so it's likely going to join the MG34 and the MG42, but it had a blistering rate of fire of 1,100 rounds a minute. Now, the MG42 can fire slightly faster, 1,200 rounds a minute with the right specializations in Battlefield 5, but I'm interested to see how DICE balances this one, because the Vickers K machine gun is also mentioned in the files. This is one of the few weapons we've had actual confirmation for Battlefield 5. This is coming to the game. It was shown off in a Dev Talks episode a little while back, but the reason I'm interested in how the Daan is going to be balanced is because this MMG, the Vickers, is kind of striking a middle ground between the MG34 and the MG42, so where's the Daan going to fit in with that extremely high rate of fire? It's really interesting, this one. See how DICE will end up balancing things. The Solo Turn S2200 light machine gun is found in the files, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Made jointly by Austrian and Switzerland gun manufacturers, the S2200 fired between 600 and 800 rounds a minute from a 30-round magazine. It also formed the basis for the German MG15 machine gun. And both the Madsen and the Shoshar LMGs are mentioned in the files as well. The Shoshar is already available as a weapon in Battlefield 5 single player during the Tirailleur War story, but the Madsen, I believe, so far hasn't been spotted anywhere. It does look strikingly similar to the Bren gun, so I'm unsure if DICE really intends to add this weapon into the game. The Shoshar, however, it's already in single player. That might be an easy move across to multiplayer for the DICE developers. And now the Recon class. However, there are only two weapons mentioned in the files, and both of them featured in Battlefield 1. We have the Ross rifle and the Selbstlader 1906. They appear to be making their way into Battlefield 5 sometime soon, and they will populate the bolt action and self-loading rifle categories. Now, beyond the four classes, there are actually several more weapons mentioned in the files, and they fall into new weapon categories. Now this is something that Florian, Drunksy, a DICE developer, mentioned during a Dev Talks episode, that this might happen during the Tides of War, DICE introducing new weapon categories that are balanced differently and give players something different to try out and use. Mentioned in the files are machine pistols and carbines, but they aren't classified under a specific class. At the moment we don't know if these will be all kit weapons, as some previous Battlefield games have employed, or if these weapons will be placed into specific classes that suit the category, or simply suit the single weapon on its own. So for carbines, we have the FN 1903 stock, the C96 carbine and the Luger artillery, all of which were included in Battlefield 1 firstly as pilot and tanker weapons and then later added to the infantry classes. However, the Delisle carbine is the standout weapon of the bunch, being the weapon that was also teased during a Dev Talks episode, and it can be found in the Under No Flag war story already in Battlefield 5. In that war story, it's given the name the Commando Carbine, and that's likely in reference to the fact it was designed to be used, a little bit like the well gun we mentioned earlier, by the British SOE behind enemy lines. Now, it's a weapon based on the SMLE Mark III Star, converted to 45 ACP rounds, with a swapped out barrel used by the Thompson submachine gun, and modified M1911 cartridges. It's basically a weapon platypus, it's just got parts from everything all thrown together. It also features a built-in suppressor, and it can hold 7 rounds in an internal magazine. And then for the machine pistols, we have the M1912 P16 and From a Stop Auto returning from Battlefield 1, but the Astra Model 900 is a slightly new face. It's based on the C96 pistol, but this is a fully automatic version that could fire at 900 rounds a minute from a 10 or 20 round magazine. In these two new categories, the carbines and machine pistols, the C96 makes an appearance in both of them. Next up, we have new gadgets. DICE has listed a few of these in the files, and they do make for some good reading. The Fliegerfaust is one of them. This is a German ground-to-air rocket launcher, portable enough to be carried around if needed. Rather than using Panzerfausts meant for tanks, we could soon be using a dedicated airplane destroyer weapon in Battlefield 5. Speaking of Panzerfaust, the Panzer Schreck is also mentioned in the files, and I'd have been very surprised if we didn't see this in Battlefield 5, if I'm honest. A larger copy of the American bazooka, the Panzer Schreck fired an 88mm round and was used to target enemy tanks on the ground. Then we have the Panzerknacker, a German magnetically charged anti-tank grenade. That's listed in the files as well. It weighs about 3 kilos, and German infantry soldiers in special tank killer squads could place these onto an enemy tank at any angle and it would do severe damage. It's commonly referred to as a mine, and this could be the Battlefield 5 equivalent of the Limpet from Battlefield 1. I know a lot of people like the Limpet mine in that game. The M2 flamethrower and the Flammenwerfer 46 were found in the files. The American M2 will likely not appear until the American forces do in Battlefield 5, and perhaps the Flammenwerfer is the German equivalent that DICE plans to equip the Germans with in those battles. And not really a gadget, but still I think worthy of a mention, the German 88mm flat gun, which many of you can see dotted around Battlefield 5 maps already, is noted in the files as a weapon. Could all of those non-working models be replaced with working ones, or at least some of them in the right locations? I guess we'll have to wait and see. And finally, a few new vehicles. Not many were mentioned, and I'm sure DICE has more planned, but the British Bishop, German Hummel, and German Grüller artillery vehicles have been found. It looks like DICE is planning to expand the vehicle options we can pick from, and on some of the maps, the larger ones like Hamada, and maybe even the upcoming Panzerstorm map, these could come in handy. Now, that's a lot of new stuff potentially coming to Battlefield 5, and again, I say potentially because until DICE does officially confirm these items, there's no way to know if these will make it into the game or not. We also don't know what order they'll arrive in, and likely they won't all be coming at the same time. DICE has a live service of constant updates and progression elements to populate, so I'd expect things to be scattered around a little bit. But now that you've heard it all, what do you think of these weapons, gadgets, and vehicles? Are the weapons listed ones you're looking forward to using, or are you still waiting for that iconic weapon, the M1 Garand? Let me know how you're feeling down below in the comments section. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for the latest Battlefield 5 information, and click that bell icon next to subscribe to get notifications as soon as I post a video. But thank you very much for watching today. My name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.